Hi guys, I'm Tammy, 36, female. I remember the day we moved to America, fresh off the boat, so to speak. I was just 19, wide-eyed and full of dreams. But it was Stella and Vito, our Italian neighbors, who really made us feel at home. They were like a second family to us, always there with a warm meal or a helping hand. And Vito, he was my partner in crime from the start. Growing up, I admired Stella, a single woman who worked tirelessly to ensure Vito had the best shot at success. I guess you could say we grew up together. Vito and I hung out in the same streets, went to the same school, and our families intertwined seamlessly. It was only natural that as we got older, Vito and I started seeing each other in a different light. We fell in love, and our families couldn't have been happier. It was like a fairy tale. I was 23 when we tied the knot, and we were ready to build a life together. Our families pitched in, helping us set up our first apartment. Everything was perfect. Or at least, that's what we thought. Then came the tragic news. Vito's father had passed away. It hit him hard, and I watched as the weight of grief settled on his shoulders. We were just starting our journey, and life threw us a curveball. Vito's father had never been a part of his life, at least not in the way any kid would wish for. It was like his dad had checked out long before we met. Even with Stella by his side, Vito held this resentment deep within him. The why and the how of his dad leaving him were questions that haunted him. Stella, in her moments of vulnerability, would share stories of an abusive, troubled man. Vito's father, drinking, drugs, and financial ruin seemed to be the common threads in these stories. But for Vito, the image of his father was tangled in a web of conflicted emotions. Despite everything, he longed for a connection, a hero to emerge from the ruins. And then the news of Vito Sr.'s passing hit us like a tidal wave. I could see it, the grief, the confusion, the pain, all swirling in Vito's eyes. He had lost a man he barely knew, yet one he desperately wanted to understand and love. In that moment, I had to step up and be the anchor to weather the storm of emotions that threatened to consume him. I became his sounding board, listening to the stories he dared not share with anyone else. The conflicting feelings of loss and relief mingled within him. I held him tight, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this, that he had a family, a real one, right there. As Vito fought with the weight of his father's passing, I knew he needed to find his own way to heal. He sought solace in the bottom of a bottle, and initially I let him be. I figured he needed time to drown his sorrows, and who was I to dictate the pace of his recovery? Everybody needed a little liquid courage every now and then, right? Unfortunately, the smell of alcohol became a familiar presence in his breath, and for a while I turned a blind eye. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, it became apparent that things were spiraling out of control. There were nights when he didn't come home at all, and that was when I knew I had to step in. Putting my foot down, I decided it was time for an intervention. I invited Stella to join us. After all, she had weathered the storm of Vito Sr.'s turbulent existence longer than any of us. The three of us sat in the living room, the air tense with unspoken words and the lingering scent of concern. I spoke from the heart, expressing my worries and fears about Vito's well-being. Stella, too, chimed in with the perspective of a mother who had witnessed her son's struggle with his father throughout the years. We weren't here to judge or condemn. We were here to offer support, to help Vito find healthier ways to cope. Oh, come on, what the hell is this? Vito, we need to talk. This can't go on. Your wife and I are worried about you, Vito. You can't keep going down this path. What path, huh? It's my life, not yours. Vito, we love you. But you can't keep drowning your pain like this. It's tearing you apart. Your father's gone, and I know it hurts, but this isn't the answer. I don't need a lecture from you two. I can handle my own problems. I'm a grown man. Vito, you're not handling anything. You're disappearing into this bottle, and we can't stand by and watch it happen. We want to help you heal, son, but you have to let us in. I don't need your help. I don't need anyone. Just leave me alone. Vito, please, just talk to us. We're not against you. We're on your side. We're your family, Vito. Let us help you. We tried pleading and begging some more, but he just shouted, I said, leave me alone. Life, after the failed intervention, became a blur of broken promises and shattered dreams. It seemed like the more I tried to reach out to Vito, the more he slipped away. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage, watching it crumble before my eyes. Stella and I became each other's confidants, sharing our fears and frustrations over the phone. We'd console each other, trying to make sense of the chaos Vito had unleashed upon our lives. But deep down, we both knew we were powerless against the grip of his addiction. Nights turned into a twisted routine. When Vito wouldn't stumble through our front door, he'd stay at Stella's place, his old home, taking advantage of the key he never returned. Each morning, I'd wake up to an empty bed, wondering if this was the day he'd finally come to his senses. The strain on our relationship was undeniable. The man I married, the one who held so much promise and potential, was slipping away. The romanticized image of us growing old together had faded into the harsh reality of dealing with a husband who had succumbed to his demons. And I was getting fed up with it all. One night, after yet another round of senseless arguments, Vito slurred out what he thought was a brilliant idea. A scheme, a plan to turn everything around. But by then, my patience had worn thin, and I couldn't bring myself to entertain his intoxicated fantasies. I longed for the man I fell in love with, not this distorted version fueled by addiction. I remember that night like it was yesterday. Vito stumbled into the room reeking of alcohol and desperation. His eyes held a wild, feverish glint as he cornered me, his words slurred, yet strangely intense. Listen, Tammy, we gotta have a baby. A baby? Vito, you're not in any condition to... But he cut me off, his voice growing louder and more aggressive. No, Tammy, you don't get it. Having a baby, that's how you leave your mark on the world. It's how you show everyone you've accomplished something. I need that. I need to leave something behind. I shook my head, a pit forming in my stomach. Vito, you're not thinking straight. Bringing a child into this mess isn't a solution. We need to fix our lives first. I know you're still hurting from your dad's death. I don't care. I want this, and you should too. In that moment, I realized I needed a strategy, a way to get through to him without escalating the situation. I took a deep breath and said, Vito, I'll only consider having kids with you if you clean up your act. I won't bring a baby into a messed up family dynamic. You need to get your crap together. I hate what your father did to you and your mom, and I'll be damned if I let it happen again. For a moment, conflicting emotions flashed across his face. He seemed torn between the desire for a family and the acknowledgement that his life was spiraling out of control. Finally, he sighed, a defeated look in his eyes. Fine, Tammy, I'll do it. I'll clean up and get my act together. We'll have a kid, and everything will be perfect. You'll see, everything is going to work out just fine. After Vito blurted out that he wanted a baby, I spilled the beans to Stella about everything that had happened the morning after. She wasn't sure it would work, but kept her fingers crossed, hoping it would help Vito get his act together. Vito gave it a shot trying to turn things around, but the same old cycle of quitting booze and then going back to it haunted him for 3 whole years. It took a toll on us, and I started to wonder if it was even worth holding on to a future that looked less likely each day. When I brought up the idea of leaving, Vito, maybe feeling desperate, made a big promise. He swore off alcohol for good, saying things would be different from this time. I was skeptical, of course, given the past 3 years of broken promises, but surprisingly, Vito stuck to his word and managed 2 years of sobriety. I was 30 at the time we were celebrating his sobriety, and that's when I told him I had the perfect gift for him. I revealed that I was pregnant, telling him that I had stopped taking my birth control a couple of months before so that this would happen. There were mixed emotions, but Vito's happiness overshadowed any doubts. He pledged to be the best dad ever, better than his father, and for the first time in a while, a happy family seemed like it could be a reality. After a smooth and peaceful 9 months, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Kerry. Life seemed perfect for us and our little family, and things were going well between us all. I had a beautiful life, a beautiful daughter. Perhaps I took it for granted at some point because everything went to shit when Kerry hit the ripe age of 3. Around this time, Vito started acting all kinds of strange. He'd stroll in looking dodgy, and I couldn't help but wonder if he was up to some cheating or worse, a relapse. Sadly, my suspicions weren't misplaced. Turns out Vito slipped up one night during an office party and started on the alcohol again. He revealed this to me when I caught him one night sneaking in at 3 a.m. smelling like some cheap liqueur. I was disgusted. I didn't want this crap in my house, and I was this close to kicking him out because, like I said all those years ago, I wouldn't allow that nonsense in my child's life. I tried not to explode in anger, wanting to acknowledge the progress he'd made, but frustration got the better of me. I hoped that the battle with alcoholism was behind us for good, so I wanted to hear him out and see what triggered him to mess up so badly once again. Babe, I know how hard you've been trying, and I don't take the past couple of years of our lives in vain. It's been very good for us. So please tell me what the hell you think you're doing. Don't you know you've got a good thing going on? Yeah, Tammy, I know. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I think you do know what happened, and I'm not here to judge you. Just talk to me. Hello? Are you even listening to me? Don't piss me off, Vito. I'm being very patient with you, even though I should kick you out of this house for breaking your promise. Even though I was trying to get through to him, he just seemed very finicky, like my words were going in one ear and coming out the other. My frustration burst into a yelling match. I demanded answers, questioning why he insisted on wrecking our lives. Vito looked more anxious than usual, finally let slip something that made me want to smack the snot out of him. Vito, what the heck is your problem? You've been acting so weird lately, weirder than usual. No, Tammy, it's not like that. Well, what is it then? Spit it out. I'm in some serious trouble, Tammy. I got into it with some shady guys. If I don't pay back these guys, things are going to get really bad. I was beyond furious, screaming, cursing at Vito for the colossal mess he had gotten us into. He was lucky that little Kerry was peacefully sleeping in her room, or our home might have transformed into a bloody crime scene. I demanded he spill everything, leaving nothing hidden. Vito reluctantly began to reveal the disgusting details of his situation. It started with harmless bets among friends, but soon spiraled into a full-blown gambling addiction. Perfect. On top of battling alcoholism, he's now a gambler. Just great. Anyways, he kept losing money, spiraling further into debt. Debt that I had no clue about until the moment, mind you. Vito confessed to borrowing money from some shady guys, assuring them that he would repay every cent and more. However, his losing streak persisted and the shady guys grew impatient. Their threats escalated, vowing to visit our home and resort to violence if Vito didn't settle the debt. The rage within me reached new heights. I couldn't fathom how he'd let things escalate to this point. The safety of our family was now at stake because of his reckless choices, and I was done. And then in the midst of my anger, Vito had what he considered a brilliant idea. "But babe, I have a solution to all of this." "What solution? Unless 35 grand is going to fall from the sky, I don't see us getting out of this. You've seen how beautiful Carrie is. What if we put her in those pageant shows? She's going to be a guaranteed winner. I mean, just look at that face. And they're paying these kids a buttload of money, babe. I swear this is going to work." "No way, Vito. I won't let you exploit our daughter like that. Those pageants are toxic, feeding into this messed up beauty industry. I won't have Carrie paraded around like a doll for a bunch of perverts. And even if it wasn't so toxic, I wouldn't let you bring her into your mess." "But I'm serious, Vito. You got another thing coming if you think you're putting her in that pageant." "Babe, just listen. If you ever bring up something like that again, I swear I'll rip your ears off. You hear me?" After the argument, Vito sulkily left, seemingly offended that I didn't endorse his reckless plan. He really must be an idiot if he thought that I would say yes. When he slammed the door and left, I was left alone with my thoughts, thinking about the gravity of the situation. It became clear to me that I needed to put as much distance as possible between us. The next morning, bright and early, I hastily packed essentials for Carrie and myself. We went to my parents' house, seeking peace from the chaos that had threatened our lives. Vito returned home late that night, only to find our absence. I knew this because he left a crap ton of frantic calls demanding answers about where we were and how we could leave him. During our heated phone conversation, I dropped the bombshell. I wanted a divorce. The chaos and danger that Vito had introduced into our lives were too much for me to bear. I knew both Carrie and I deserved better. Amidst the heated exchange, Vito broke down, his sobs audible over the phone. Despite the emotional commotion, he agreed to the divorce, claiming he would do anything to make me happy. Thank God, Vito was actually very compliant with the clauses of the divorce. I said I wanted full custody of Carrie and that I didn't care much about settlements or hefty alimony. I just wanted to get away from that man before the crap hit the fan, you know. By the end of that same year, we were officially done. As you can imagine, this put a serious strain on my relationship with Stella. She understood my side of things, but of course her loyalty was still with her son, so talking and hanging out was put at a halt. I was very sad for Carrie. She barely understood what was going on, but losing her father and her grandma so soon must have been hard for her. I'm hoping that when she's older she'll understand where I was coming from and that I did everything to protect her. So 3 more years rolled by and Carrie hit the big 6. I managed to build a life for myself without Vito, chilling in a nice little apartment with my baby girl. Things were going smoothly and I really didn't want to hear from Vito or know what he was up to after that whole mess with owing money to people. I was just living a peaceful life, focused on taking care of my daughter. Then out of the blue one night there was a knock on my door, and when I swung it open, there's Stella, looking all helpless and worn out, like, what on earth is going on now? Stella, what are you doing here? Look, there isn't much time. How did you get my address? I got it from your parents, Tammy. Look, Vito isn't doing well. Oh, tell me about it. I know, Stella. No, like he really isn't doing well. Ever since the divorce, he's been a complete wreck. Nobody can get through to him. He keeps moaning and groaning that he's saying that the only solution is if he can see his daughter at least one last time. I don't know, Stella. I still have a lot of love for you, you know that, but I can't put Carrie in danger like that. Please, Tammy, I'm begging you. I've tried everything. Why do you think I haven't contacted you in so long? Do you think I want to be here? I wish I could find any other way, but this is the only solution. I then turned to see Carrie, who was off in the distance, watching TV innocently. This is the only thing that will save him, Tammy. Seeing his daughter, please, you have to let me take her. After seeing her crying and thinking about it for a while, I caved into Stella's plea to take Carrie to see Vito. I figured with Stella there, everything would be fine and she could handle her and that Vito wouldn't harm my baby. Stella and I agreed that Carrie would sleep over for 2 nights, and if all went well, I might reconsider shared custody. Stella was super thankful and I went to pack a bag for Carrie, sending her off with Grandma Stella. 2 nights came and went and I was expecting Carrie and Stella to come home. But it was getting late. I kept calling Stella to see what was up. Eventually she answered, saying that Carrie wanted to stay an extra night. When I asked to talk to Carrie, Stella said she was sleeping and that they'd chat in the morning. I was a little suspicious, but I chalked it up to typical motherly paranoia, so I didn't want to go off the deep end and go ballistic on them. I mean, 3 years had passed, so it was only normal for them to want to spend as much time with Carrie. So I agreed for Carrie to come in the morning. But just like the day before, Stella didn't drop her off and avoided my calls until late at night. I figured Stella was just being an overly attached grandma, and when I managed to talk to Carrie that night, she seemed okay, saying she missed her daddy and grandma. That's when I said I'd pick her up myself in the morning. But when I asked for the location, Stella dodged the questions. Another day passed, and then another day, and still no peep, no nothing. After 5 days of this, I had enough. I needed to get my daughter back. I activated the Apple AirTag I put in Carrie's bag and found out where she was. So I went to the house and banged on the door. Nobody answered, but I could hear Carrie crying inside. So what did I do? I decided to break the door down. When I got in, I saw Carrie dressed up in some poofy dress with tons of makeup, crying because she didn't like any of it. Her hair was in some big updo, and she looked very uncomfortable. But what shocked me even more was right by her side there was Vito and Stella, getting her ready for what I could only guess was a pageant. What the heck? I lost it. Absolutely lost it on them both, demanding to know what the heck they thought they were doing. Vito and Stella stumbled over their words, trying to explain that Vito was still drowning in debt and they needed money, so they signed Carrie up for a competition. Luckily, I was there before they could go through with their foolishness. I was beyond furious and decided to call the police. Stella and Vito begged me not to, but I wasn't having any of it. I started wiping off the makeup, yanking Carrie out of that ridiculous dress, and dismantling her painful-looking hairstyle. I told them they'd rot in jail because I'd exposed Vito's gambling, and I hoped the people he owed would come for them and deal with them accordingly. Tammy, please listen to us. You know, Stella, when you came to me 5 days ago, I thought that you were being sincere. That's why I let you keep my daughter for 5 days. I thought that her trustworthy grandma would take care of her, as she promised. But clearly, I was wrong. I expected this type of crap from Vito, but you? This is a new low. You are both sick. I guess the apple didn't fall far from the tree. The police had arrived, and I had put my daughter in the car, telling her to lie down and try and rest. She was obviously relieved to see her mama come to save her, and I couldn't be happier that I came at the time I did. Who knows what could have happened if I had come later? When the police approached me, I explained to them that my ex-husband was violating the terms of our divorce. He wasn't supposed to see Carrie, and he was a known gambler and alcoholic, and I was scared for my daughter's safety. The police arrested Vito, but left Stella behind. I drove off, leaving Stella crying on the doorstep and Vito being pushed into a squad car. Good riddance. Hey y'all, let me set the stage for you. I'm Emma, 33, female, with a penchant for sarcasm and a history of wrestling with fertility demons, both of which will show up a lot in this story time. So buckle up for this wild ride. Growing up, I wasn't sure if having kids was even in the cards for me. I had always dealt with some fertility issues, so I didn't really think I would have kids. Fast forward to meeting the love of my life, Eddie. I don't know what this man did to me, but he made me want to have at least 10 babies. He just turned my life upside down, you know. Anyway, we tied the knot with dreams of a big, happy family. Now, as you can imagine, it was hard for me to cope with pregnancies because of my PCOS. It made trying for kids extra hard, and we were often met with disappointments. That was until we were finally able to conceive. The first time I got pregnant in my 20s, it was like riding a hormonal roller coaster. Bed rest became my new normal, and let me tell you, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. But hey, I toughed it out. And miraculously, we had our bundle of joy, Cherry. Post-pregnancy, I was on a strict regimen of bed rest. I was miserable. I felt like my whole world was crumbling. But I was so excited and happy because of this new life stage I was entering. As you can imagine, the mental stress of dealing with having a baby and being on the verge of dying was a lot for me to handle. My tissue box beside my bed became my best friend. Needless to say, it was a tough time for sure. And you know what? Friends and family rallied around me, offering help and bringing me casseroles, offering to clean up around the house and take care of the baby. Eddie and Major, my husband and father-in-law respectively, were always by my side. They made me feel like a princess with the way they would wait at my every beck and call. They really made this whole process a lot smoother for me, and I'll forever be grateful for it. I remember they would say things like, "Whatever you need, babe. I'm only one call away." "Oh, you guys, thank you so much for all the help. You're amazing." "No, babe, you're amazing. I mean, despite all the odds. You handled giving birth like a champ. Seriously, you're stronger than us all. You deserve the rest and much, much more." As I said, the people around me were pretty helpful and compassionate. Well, all except for one person, Mabel, my mother-in-law. Now, I'm not saying she should have baked me cookies or anything, but a little sympathy wouldn't have hurt. Mabel made it a point to avoid visiting me, which left me confused because we had a pretty decent relationship. When I asked Major why she wouldn't come and visit, he would always go a bit quiet or brush off my questions by saying I didn't have time to worry about Mabel. I always thought it was strange. Why would Major not want to talk about Mabel and her presence, or the lack thereof? That was until I got my questions answered when Mabel finally decided to grace me with her presence. Let's just say it was more of a storm than a helping hand. Complaints about this and that, nagging that could rival a drill sergeant, you name it. Picture this. There I am trying to heal and navigate the delicate dance of my motherhood, and in walks Mabel, the queen of negativity. Instead of a supportive shoulder, I got a barrage of critiques. It felt like I was in a sitcom, but trust me, there was nothing funny about it. Now, I'm not one to exaggerate, but Mabel's visits were like a tornado of bad vibes. I'd be lying there exhausted and emotional, and she'd swoop in with a cloud of negativity that made me question if I was doing this whole motherhood thing right. "Emma, you're still in bed? Why are you being so lazy? You're a mother now. You have to get up and take care of the house and child." I'd been prescribed tons of bed rest from the doctors because I had a high-risk pregnancy. "It was all very complicated, Mabel. You know this." "That's baloney. They're lying to you because they want you to get even more sick so you can come back, and then they charge you thousands of dollars worth of medication. What you need is to get up and work." "I appreciate the concern, Mabel, but I know what's best for my body,
and right now that's to rest. Whatever, just don't come crawling to me when that's all you'll be able to do, crawl, because you're being such a lazy bum. Her negativity started reaching new heights, like she was auditioning for a role as the evil stepmother in a soap opera. I decided enough was enough. My mental health was non-negotiable, so I sat down with Eddie and told him about how Mabel's comments were affecting me. He would normally be at work when Mabel would come, so he never really witnessed her BS for himself. He was a good guy, my Eddie. He promised to have a chat with his mom, tell her to tone it down, and create a peaceful coexistence in our little family bubble. Now, here's where things just got messier. Eddie had the talk with Mabel, and instead of a ceasefire, Mabel, offended and proud, decided to play the martyr card. Apparently, she said, "If my presence isn't wanted, I just won't bother coming around anymore." Wasn't I meant to be the dramatic one? Considering I just had a baby? Cue the eye rolls. Nobody said her presence wasn't wanted. I just wanted a sprinkle of positivity, not a hurricane of complaints. But hey, who was I to argue with the queen of misconstrued drama? And then there was Major, my father-in-law, who was missing in action during these family skirmishes. His work schedule was busier than a beehive in summer, and when he did have a moment to breathe, Mabel shot down any suggestion of a joint visit to see their grandchild. It was like a twisted game of emotional chess, and baby Cherry got stuck with only one grandparent at a time. Don't get me wrong, she was so privileged to have both her grandparents because I know not many people have that opportunity. But come on, dude. You mean you don't want my kid to experience having both of her grandparents visiting and loving on her? Just weird to me. As I alluded to earlier, when I met Eddie, I had dreams, you all. Dreams of family gatherings where everyone was happy and the room filled with laughter. But Mabel's attitude seemed to be slamming the door on those dreams. Now I was left watching Cherry grow up with an unbalanced relationship with her grandparents, and it stung. I wanted Cherry to experience the love and chaos of both grandparents at the same time, not awkwardly scheduled solo visits. It was like building a puzzle with missing pieces, and it broke my heart. 8 years had gone by at this point. Life had practically turned back to normal, with Cherry now a sassy 8-year-old and family dynamics settling into something more normal. Surprisingly, Mabel and Major started making more frequent visits, and a strange thing happened. The older Cherry got the less hostile and downright, excuse my French, bitchy Mabel became towards me. It was like a switch had been flipped, and suddenly we were on speaking terms without an underlying tension that could cut through steel. I was happy, don't get me wrong, but I was wondering why she had the change of heart all of a sudden. I chalked up that rough patch in our relationship to some form of postpartum frustration rubbing off on my mother-in-law. I know it sounds crazy, but I had stumbled upon some articles about husbands experiencing postpartum symptoms whenever their wives had given birth, so I assumed other family members might feel it too. Call it empathy or cosmic alignment, but it seemed like Cherry growing up was the magic cure for Mabel's attitude. Fast forward to my 33rd birthday, the day that threw me the biggest curveball of my life. Guess what? I was pregnant. Now here's the kicker. Eddie and I, after navigating the minefield of my first pregnancy, had decided that we'd look into adoption for any future additions to the family. The complications had us second-guessing the whole biological route, as you can imagine. But life has a funny way of surprising you, doesn't it? That night, as I blew out the candles on my birthday cake, I was feeling a bit ill. So after everyone had left, I decided to take a pregnancy test just to be sure, and wouldn't you know it, the darn thing said positive. Now, as excited as I was about expanding our family, fear gripped me. Another potentially high-risk pregnancy? The memories of bed rest, complications, and the emotional roller coaster flooded back. I broke down to Eddie, pouring out my anxieties and worries. Parenthood 2.0 was on the horizon, and this time the stakes felt higher than ever. Babe, please stop crying. I don't know what we're going to do. It's not like I don't want this pregnancy. But you're scared of something wrong happening. Right. I'm scared too, Emma. It was a lot to handle last time, but you handled it like a champ. I just don't want anything to go wrong. With me or the baby, especially the baby. And nothing will go wrong, babe, I promise. We got to have faith. Clearly, God wants us to have another kid, so let's have another kid. So there I was, you all, knocked up with a surprise pregnancy, and Eddie, my rock, convinced me that we should face this head-on together. He promised to be with me every step of the way, and damn if that man didn't know how to make a lady feel loved. About a month or so later, we decided it was time to spill the beans to our families. The excitement in the air was palpable, and everyone was over the moon for us, except, you guessed it, Mabel. She was in the corner scowling like someone stole her last piece of pie, and when it was time for congratulations, she was as silent as a mime. Now, at that point, I was no stranger to Mabel's mood swings, but this was a whole new level of icy indifference. I could practically feel the chill coming off her. But you know what? I had bigger fish to fry. This mama-to-be wasn't going to let Mabel's bipolar nature stress me out. I had a baby to grow and a family to build, and I wasn't about to let anyone rain on my parade. The rest of the months passed by fairly smoothly, and I couldn't help but feel like this pregnancy was a walk in the park compared to the last one. Maybe it was the experience, maybe it was the fact that Eddie and I were better equipped to handle the ups and downs, or maybe the universe decided to cut us some slack. Whatever it was, I was grateful. Sure, Mabel's storm clouds lingered in the background, but Eddie and I were too busy preparing for our growing family to let it dampen our spirits. Like I said earlier, this pregnancy wasn't anywhere near as complicated as my first, so you can imagine my surprise when my water broke 1 week earlier than what was scheduled. Naturally, panic ensued, both for me and Eddie, because we weren't exactly prepared for an early entrance. Throughout the pregnancy, Eddie and I decided to go a bit unconventional. I thought, hey, let's get a doula and a wet nurse, and why not try for a home birth? Now, Eddie was of course skeptical, and who could blame him, given my track record with complicated pregnancies? He was rightfully concerned. But being the persuasive woman that I am, I managed to convince him that everything would be just fine and that we could go straight to the hospital if need be. Fast forward to the big night, and wouldn't you know it, ambulances are taking their sweet time due to some road construction nonsense mess. It's like the universe decided to throw us one last curveball, adding to the drama and the panic. Thankfully, my doula was living in the neighborhood, practically living next door, and she swooped in to save the day. In the comfort of our home, amidst the chaos and panic, my doula delivered the baby. It was a scary experience, but luckily the little one didn't have any major complications. Finally, when the ambulance crew waltzed in, fashionably late, they whisked both me and the baby off to the hospital to make sure everything was ship-shaped. Thankfully, no complications with the little one, but as for me, well, the hospital wanted to run some extra tests just to be sure because I was complaining about a lot of pain. Eddie, being the trooper that he was, stuck by our sides throughout the night, making sure we were all taken care of, refusing to sit down even for a second before he knew that we were both in good hands. Bless that man's heart. Come early morning, he left for home to catch some well-deserved rest after this whirlwind of a night, while I got some much-needed skin-to-skin with my baby boy, Benjamin. Postpartum at the hospital was shaping up pretty well for both me and the baby. We both had barely slept, and I was high off oxytocin, just appreciating the new bundle of joy that we had welcomed. We were under the watchful eye of the hospital staff, and everything seemed to be sailing smoothly. Then, in the early hours of the morning, at around 8 a.m., came the surprise of my life. In walks Mabel, the queen of drama herself, at the hospital. Now, this shocked me to the core, given that Mabel and I were barely on speaking terms towards the due date of the baby. She strolled in, looking uncharacteristically smiley for someone who'd been frowning for the past 8 to 9 months. "Mabel, surprised to see me?" "Honestly, yeah. You've kind of given me the cold shoulder this whole pregnancy. Not that I'm surprised." "Oh, hush. I've been busy, you know. My life is filled to the brim with work, something you don't know enough about." "Excuse me?" "Never mind. I just wanted to make sure the baby was okay. That was quite a scare last night." "You're telling me. Thank God we're both okay." "Yes, thank God indeed. Maybe you should stop giving birth since you're clearly not cut out for it." Well, as you can imagine, that's when I lost it. I started yelling at my mother-in-law, asking her what her problem was and why she was so angry with me for apparently no reason. It was like a showdown in a soap opera, and the tension in the hospital room was thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. "You've got some nerve talking to me like that, Mabel. You think you can speak to me that way? You're crazy. It's a good thing the baby isn't here to witness you acting like a damn fool." "You're one to talk. You need a psych eval or something. You have beef with pregnant women, it seems, which is crazy because you were pregnant. What is your problem with me?" "Don't be ridiculous, Emma. I don't have a problem with pregnant women." "Well, it seems like you do. Ever since I gave birth to Cherry, you avoided me like the plague, and when you would come around, you would make my life a living hell. I know it has something to do with pregnancy because you dropped the act when I was no longer pregnant. I would even say that the past 8 years have been great, but now that I've given birth, you've started your crap again." Mabel, never one to back down, started yelling back. It was a verbal tennis match. Each word a serve and volley of frustration. Nurses and doctors peeked in like spectators at a tennis match, unsure of whether to intervene or let the fight continue. We went back and forth for a bit, and that was when Mabel dropped the bomb. "I just think that you're taking this postpartum thing way too far. You're so dramatic, Emma. Honestly, get a grip." "Excuse me?" "It's always high risk this and complication that. Like, grow up. Women from before had to give birth to their own babies and watch them die in their arms, and you need attention because what? Your uterus doesn't work properly? Birth isn't a walk in the park for anyone, Emma. You need to have some shame." She called me dramatic for needing extra medical attention and care after my high-risk pregnancies. In her eyes, the fact that I didn't opt for hospital birth in the first place made me an uncaring mother, because if I really had complications, I would ensure that my baby was well taken care of by medical staff. This was the same thing that Eddie was worried about, but of course less mean, and I assured him that plenty of healthy births happened in the home and that there was proven documentation about the benefits of home birth. I tried to explain that to Mabel, but she continued yelling and saying that it was some hippy-dippy nonsense. Yeah, you heard that right. Holistic care was hippy-dippy nonsense. I felt a lump forming in my throat as Mabel continued her assault, telling me that if I really cared about having a smooth pregnancy, I would have stuck to the hospital route. Every word felt like a punch to the gut, and I found myself lost in a sea of confusion and hurt. Unable to hold back the tears, I began to cry, not knowing how to react to someone I thought was family treating me this way. But Mabel, she was relentless. She went on and on, tearing me down for having a problematic uterus, like it was something I chose for myself, and like I could control it. Through the tears, I managed to gather enough strength to tell her to leave, but it was like Mabel was fueled by my tears, as if the waterworks were giving her the strength to unleash even harsher insults. She went on, telling me the craziest things, each word driving a wedge deeper into my already shattered sense of self. Then she said, "You think you're so special. You even had the nerve to take my husband away from his busy schedule just to check up on you because you were feeling sick. Really? He wanted to come visit me, unlike some people." "Yeah, Emma, I didn't want to visit you. You know why? Because your laziness disgusts me. You expect everyone to wait on your beck and call like you're some queen. Let me tell you something. I had 4 children, and every single time I gave birth, I was called to work the next day." And I'm so sorry to hear that. You deserved the rest and the care you needed. Shut up. It happened for a reason. It made me strong and not weak and pathetic like you. You should pack up your things and go home to your husband. You need to cook. You need to clean. What? As a matter of fact, you should go home right now. You should clean the dishes. Are you crazy? According to Mabel, she had gone to my home before coming to the hospital to ask about the progress of the baby, and she found the place in a mess. And she found a pile of dishes in the sink. Seriously? She was going to give me crap for dishes? I literally had my water break the night before, but for some reason she couldn't comprehend that. I tried to explain that I can't just walk back home, but she's in full-on shout mode. It's like a tornado of accusations and chaos, and I'm stuck in the middle of it. Just when I thought this night couldn't get any crazier, Major's voice cuts through the chaos from behind us. Got you. Suddenly, Mabel started trembling like a leaf in a storm. I'm looking at Major like he's my knight in shining armor riding in to rescue me from this crazy situation. Turns out, Major had overheard the whole thing and decided to play detective. He knew Mabel's antics were out of control and he'd had enough. The "got you" was his way of exposing her for being so awful. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same. I was just telling Emma, save it. I heard the whole thing. How could you speak to her this way? I knew you had your issues, but I didn't know you could be so vile. And that thing about you working while juggling 4 kids? Why did you lie? You know you had all the support from your mom and sister during that time. Why are you trying to make Emma feel bad? She just gave birth. Mabel, caught in the act, was shaking like a leaf as Major laid down the law. He wasn't buying any of her explanations, calling her out for the evil she was trying to put me through. Major didn't mince words. He straight up told Mabel that he thought it would be best for her to spend the night in a hotel instead of at home because he was utterly disgusted with her behavior. It was like a courtroom drama, and Mabel was left broken and on the verge of a mental breakdown. I don't know why she looked so distraught, as if getting caught was the last thing she wanted. There she was, like a deer in the headlights, caught being absolutely evil towards me for no reason. She left, tail between her legs, and I turned to Major and asked him what the heck just happened. Major, looking as bewildered as I felt, confessed he had no clue why Mabel was being so awful, but he knew that he had to put a stop to it. In a moment of clarity, I suggested that maybe she was just jealous. For once, the attention wasn't solely on her. People had to take care of me and look after me, and of course, she was jealous, and that seemed to have triggered something deep within her. Now, both Mabel's husband and son were fed up with her antics. They aren't on speaking terms with her, finally realizing just how awful she could be towards me. Mabel, in a desperate attempt to mend things, has reached out to me, even asking for my help. But you know what? Every single time she calls, I decline. Sometimes toxic people need to learn the hard way. This grown woman treated me like dirt for reasons that are still unclear. But whatever it was, I hope it was worth it, because the chances of her seeing us for a while, me and the kids, are slim to none.
Hey there, it's your girl, Aline, 27, female, and I've got a wild story to share. I always wanted my stories up on this channel, so here's hoping I make the cut. Now, I've always had this go-getter mindset, wanted to be the best at everything, and I mean everything. It made me an easy target for the haters, those judgmental folks who can't stand a gal hustling and achieving her dreams. But you know what? I didn't give a darn. I was out here getting things done, making sure my life was comfy and stress-free. At 24, I did the unthinkable. I dropped out of college, said adios to that academic life, and decided to start my own business. And what was I making, you ask? Leggings. Yeah, you heard it right, leggings. Now, everyone and their grandma thought I was bat crazy for ditching college to make leggings. Aline, are you out of your mind, they'd say. But you know what? I had a vision. and I was determined to make it big, even if nobody else could see it. Fast forward a couple of years to when I'm 26, and guess what? My man, Jack, 30 male, who I'd been dating for several years at that point, proposes. Now, at first I was tempted to drop a hard no because I was knee-deep in my leggings empire. But love won, and I said yes because, well, I wanted to build a family and a dang business with the guy. Now, I didn't think getting hitched to my man Jack would throw a wrench in my grand plans, but boy was I wrong. The leggings empire I was building didn't exactly take a nosedive. I mean, how could it, with me running the game? But it sure as heck wasn't soaring the heights I wanted. And you want to know why? Enter Gail, 60, female, and Jennifer, 30, female. The big bad bosses of the family, often referred to as scary grandma and scary auntie, for their iron-fisted rule over family matters. Now, I ain't heartless or stupid. I understood why Gail ruled with an iron fist. I mean, raising twins on her own after Jack's sorry excuse for her father abandoned ship must have been really rough on her. And that tough-as-nails parenting style of hers? Yeah, it rubbed off on Jennifer, too. They ran the show with a heavy hand because of their poor coping mechanisms. I was studying psychology before I dropped out, so I know a thing or two about this stuff. Surprisingly, Jack wasn't a mirror image of his mother and sister. The dude wasn't a raging B-word like the other two. But hey, I wasn't about to question it. Sometimes you just roll with the punches and be grateful. As the wedding preparations kicked into gear, I got a front row seat to the control freak show that was Jennifer and Gail. I knew it was bad, but this was the first time I had to constantly witness it, and it was a lot. Now, like I said, I get it. Jennifer unmarried and with a heartbreak tale of her own, and Gail still dealing with the aftermath of her deadbeat ex. I get it. Life's thrown them some curveballs. So being the good Christian woman I was raised to be, I decided to put my pride aside and let them essentially enjoy the wedding experience they never truly got to have. I thought that they could help me with my choices, but I guess that's the part where I messed up. Hey Gail, Jennifer, what do you think about this beige? I was thinking T13 or T17. What do you think? Beige is such an awful color. Why would you want it for your wedding? Oh, I agree, it's ugly. You need something that's gonna pop. I wanted beige because it was my mother's favorite color. Since she can't be here, I wanted to incorporate her into my wedding. Oh, well, I still think it's ugly. R.I.P. though. Jennifer, don't be so rude. I suppose she knows what she's doing. It is her day after all, even if we think the color is trashy. Trashy? They would make rude comments like this all the time, and it was slowly getting on my nerves. When I realized that they were acting a bit too comfy with my attempts to include them, it was too late. Even when I made it clear that I no longer wanted or needed their input, they made it their mission to change things according to what they wanted. Despite it being my wedding, I found myself bending over backwards to accommodate their every wish. I mean, I love Jack, but damn, planning a wedding with the scary duo breathing down your neck wasn't a walk in the park. So, the cake's gonna be red velvet? Red velvet? What the heck? Have you lost your mind, Jack? What's the problem now, guys? Red velvet isn't classy at all. Mom's right. Why not go for a classic like vanilla with buttercream frosting? Jack and I love red velvet. It was the first cake we shared together on our first date. But I don't like red velvet. That's all right. You don't have to eat it. Jack, that was so rude. No, Jennifer, it's all right. He does have a point. It isn't even our day. We were only making suggestions. And I highly recommend the vanilla. Thanks for the input, guys, but like I've said, we've got it covered from here. Every time Jack and I put our feet down, telling them to respect our wedding wishes, it was like fireworks. Jennifer and Gail would throw a hissy fit that could compete with a toddler's tantrum. They deliberately messed things up, printing the wrong junk on our invites and feeding the wedding planner the wrong info. It was like we were dealing with a pair of rebellious teenagers and their excuses. It was an honest mistake. Yeah, we wouldn't have messed up if you'd gone with what we'd wanted. We put up with their fussiness because, frankly, we were used to it. But you all, there comes a point where even the most patient and kind souls say, enough is enough. And that breaking point, it was when Jennifer and Gail had the audacity to tell me to slow down my leggings sale. Could you believe it? They claimed it would take away from focusing on the wedding and building our family. Now, I may be Texan, but I ain't buying that horse manure. I told them to take a hike and kept focusing on my sales. But oh boy, that's when things went from bad to downright crazy. My leggings website suddenly and mysteriously got flooded with spam and hate from different accounts, saying the nastiest things about my business. You can say a lot of crap about me. You could even spit in my face, but when it comes to my business, I promise you cannot talk about my business and the things I work hard in. I take pride in my work, and nobody can fault me for my quality. Now here's the kicker. Jennifer and Gail seemed a little too happy about it. Yeah, you heard that right. Their faces practically lit up like a Christmas tree when I told them about the decline in sales. I don't understand why this would happen. Who would do such an awful thing? Honestly, maybe this is a good thing. Why would you say that? She doesn't mean anything by it. Yeah, I just mean that this can be seen as a good thing because you now have time for the wedding. But I don't want my business to go under. I don't think that's going to happen. You're just going to take a small break, that's all. Something about their lack of concern set off alarm bells in my head. Call it intuition, call it instinct, but I started getting suspicious. Did they have something to do with the whole mess? It was a thought that slithered in my mind and I couldn't shake it off. But, and it's a big but, I didn't want to bring it up to Jack. They were his blood, after all, and I didn't want to drop a bomb that could potentially detonate our relationship. So I bit my tongue and focused on getting my business back on track. Fast forward to the wedding, and boy, it was a ride. Despite the crap Jennifer and Gail pulled, Jack and I managed to have a good day filled with love and joy. Jennifer and Gail behaved themselves for the most part, often terrorizing the teens and kids within the family because of how rowdy they were acting, leaving Jack and I alone, thank God. We were hopeful about the future, a future we were building together. I thought that the second-hand bridezillas would take a chill pill after all was said and done, but once again, I was wrong. A couple of months into wedded bliss, and Jennifer and Gail made it their mission to check up on us constantly. I mean, we should have just invited them to the honeymoon with the way they were acting. It was sick. They would always nitpick at everything, saying how they would do things differently, and it was getting on my nerves. Now, skip ahead a bit more, and their shenanigans didn't stop. I was getting more and more pissed by the day, and it felt like I was in some polyamorous relationship instead of being with the one I actually married. And to make matters worse, he wouldn't even intervene or tell his family to buzz off. I was the one always expressing my discomfort, and then I would be the one having to call Jennifer and Gail hours later, apologizing for being so rude to them. I was done, and I decided that I talked to my dear old husband about everything, so I finally spilled the beans to Jack about my suspicions regarding Jennifer and Gail having a hand in the downfall of my business before the wedding. Let me tell you, Jack wasn't pleased. We got into an argument that shook the foundation of our relationship, and we had just gotten married. "What the hell are you saying, Aline?" "Look, even you have to admit that this is crazy. How could the hate come out of completely nowhere?" I should be flattered that you'd think they'd be smart enough to do that. But my mom doesn't even know how to use Google, and Jennifer has better things to do. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But this isn't coming from nowhere, and you know it. Could you blame me? I know you have your suspicions, but this is taking things too far, babe. Maybe I wouldn't have suspicions if you helped me. You just watch your mother and sister come and mess around with our place. This is our home, Jack. You're supposed to lead. You're supposed to be in control of this. I am leading. Oh, yeah? Then why is it that I'm the only one standing up for us? For our home, for our lifestyle, for our everything. You know how they are. Talking to them is like talking to a brick wall. I gave up years ago. Look, I get it, but you're the only one who can get through to them. They'll listen to you. Aline, just drop it, okay? I'm sick of arguing about this crap. After Jack and I had that argument, our relationship went sour, like milk left out in the sun for too long. I tried everything to patch things up, apologizing a dozen times, and even said I was in the wrong for accusing his mom and sister of messing with my business and asking for things to go back to normal. But Jack? He was giving me the cold shoulder like I killed his puppy. Then, one day, I put my foot down, told him to grow up or sign the divorce papers, 'cause I wasn't about to put up with this stupid silent treatment nonsense. It was like talking to a brick wall until Jack looked scared, like really scared. Turns out he had a reason for acting all distant. He dropped the bomb on me. He got the boot at work due to some budget cuts, and get this, he didn't even bother telling me. What? When did this happen? Last month. And exactly when were you planning on telling me? Soon. Unbelievable. Are you kidding me right now? I was furious. I asked why the heck he didn't come to me with that info, and Jack's excuse? Brace yourself. He thought we were still fighting, and he didn't feel like talking to me. Well, that set me off. I told him I'd been over the fight ages ago and even tried to reconcile, and he knew it, but he was the one playing hard to get. And what about rent? How are we going to cover it next month? Babe, don't worry. You can cover me in the meantime, just until I get back on my feet, and I'll pay you back. Ugh, I can't believe this crap. I'm not going to lie, paying rent on my own for the foreseeable future pissed me off. This was not part of the plan, and Jack, let me tell you, his attitude did not sit well with me. I was downright turned off by the whole family dynamic at that point. I started regretting marrying into this toxic circus. My mama, bless her soul, was probably shaking her head with worry and pity from up there, thinking, Aline, I taught you better than this. But you know what? I'm not one to back down. I had to make this work. I owed it to myself, my mama, and heck, even Jack. So I decided to be the bigger person and extend an olive branch. One fine evening, I invited Jennifer and Gail to dinner. A little treat, you know, a fresh start in our strained relationships, hoping that we can just move on from all this drama. But no surprise here, they weren't exactly the picture of receptiveness. Instead, they went on a criticism spree, tearing apart everything, from the food to the decor to the very walls of our house. I see you've decided to use beige in the decor again. How many times do I have to tell you how ugly it is? And how many times do I have to tell you that that was my mama's favorite color? And even if it wasn't, why can't I have beige in my home? Aline, no need to get your panties all twisted up. Gosh, have some class. Jack, are you going to say anything? The food is good, babe. Seriously? Actually, that's a lie. I think it's a bit dry. And bland, like cafeteria food. Now that, my dear Reddit fam, pushed me to the edge. I snapped, and I mean full-blown Texas tornado snapping, yelling at everyone at the table like a mama bear protecting her cubs. It was a showdown, and let me tell you, it was a long time coming. Enough! I'm sick of all of you. Why do you treat me like this? What did I ever do to you? Why do you gotta nag at every little thing I do? Aline, how dare you? Shut up, Gail, I'm sick of that mouth. I was yelling my frustrations, trying to make my voice heard, but it was like trying to outshoot a tornado. 3 against 1, and I could see the storm brewing. Jennifer, Gail, and even Jack chimed in, telling me I was being dramatic. Gaslit? Oh, you bet. I felt like I was drowning in the sea of disbelief and frustration, but hold on to your hats, 'cause it gets even wilder. Gail, in all her wisdom, suggested that she and Jennifer should move into our home because, I quote, Aline was clearly insane. Excuse me? What? Was I in an episode of Punk'd? I couldn't believe my ears. And you know what made it worse? When Jennifer and Gail turned to Jack, asking him what he thought about them moving in, Jack, to my shock and horror, agreed. The man I married, the one who was supposed to have my back even against his crazy-ass family, was nodding along like this was the best idea since sliced bread. Well, let me tell you, that was the last straw. I stormed upstairs, locked Jack out of the bedroom, and made him sleep on the couch that night. I wanted to sleep as fast as possible so that I could wake up from that nightmare. The morning after I locked Jack out, I woke up to the sound of chaos downstairs. Movers were shifting furniture, and Jennifer and Gail were rearranging the whole darn house like it was an episode of House Hunters. I marched downstairs ready to unleash another round of fury. I was about to show them how we do it in Texas, but Gail shut me down real quick. It's like she was prepared for all of this. She tells me to shut up and accept that this is their home now. Excuse me? Jack and I busted our asses to get this place, and I had been paying rent for my own for the past 12 months. And now, all of a sudden, it's some weird episode of home invasion? 3 gruesome weeks crawled by, and I swear to God it felt like forever. I was walking on eggshells trying to avoid these intruders in my own home. Jack and I, we were sleeping in separate rooms. The couch became his new bed, and he even bought an air mattress because Gail and Jennifer claimed the guest room as their own. By the end of that 3rd week, I was at my wit's end. I needed to talk to Jack, lay it all out on the table, and tell him I was fed up. But before I could, Gail and Jennifer approached me, evil smirks plastered on their faces like the Joker. What do you want? Is that any way to treat your family? You two are far from family with the way you've been treating me. Enough with the drama. We're here to tell you something important. We're kicking you out of the house. Excuse me? You heard my mama line. Get out of here. We don't need you anymore. You're such a buzzkill. Your mood is upsetting the feng shui of this house. I'll feng shui the both of you if you don't get the heck out of my house. What the hell? We've already talked to Jack and he's on board. Oh, is he now? Like it was his cue, Jack, looking as sheepish as a dog caught in the trash, stepped out of the kitchen hearing everything that went down. I grilled him on whether this madness was true, that they wanted to kick me out of my own house. Jack mumbled like a kid who got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, gave some feeble excuses, which I can't even be bothered to tell you all here, because it was all BS. At that moment, I thought Jack was a complete idiot. After all, I was the one paying the rent. How was he going to manage without me? And that's when it clicked. He wasn't going to manage without me. I realized at that moment that Jack hadn't told his mom and sister about losing his job. That's what Jennifer meant when she said they didn't need me anymore. Maybe they thought Jack was able to handle the finances on his own. Little did they know. But why would he go along with this stupid plan of kicking me out? Surely he didn't think I'd continue paying. I didn't know what he was thinking, blindly obeying his idiot mother and sister like that. But he was going to be in for a doozy. Hello? Are you even listening? She's too stunned to speak. How pathetic. I kept quiet and started quietly packing some things of mine, and oh boy, the smug comments and laughter from Jennifer and Gail were as irritating as a mosquito in a Texas summer. But I bit my tongue, you all. Kept my mouth shut, because revenge is a dish served best cold. Before walking out that front door, I dropped a bomb on them. I reminded Jennifer and Gail about the rent, which was $7,500 a month. They scoffed, saying Jack would cover it. But here's where the mic drop moment happened. I revealed that Jack had been fired a couple of months ago, couldn't pay rent, and it was yours truly covering the bills. The looks on their faces, priceless. What do you mean? Jack, what the hell is she talking about? Answer us, is this true? Yes, it's true, okay? I lost my job. But since you're all so comfortable with me leaving, I'm sure that means that you have the means to pay for this place. Jennifer and Gail were now begging me to stay, a complete 180 from their snarky and nasty attitudes from earlier, claiming they had no clue I was not only the breadwinner but the sole earner. Jennifer even said she admired me for putting up with her stupid brother, but I just looked at them, shook my head, and called them pathetic. At that moment I declared I was done with this circus called marriage, and said I would send some divorce papers flying into Jack's email. As I made my exit, Jennifer begged me to stay, and Gail went full-on yelling mode at Jack, demanding to know why he lied about having all that money. I'm guessing he lied about having money for some reason. Maybe that's when the women got the crazy idea to kick me out, since they thought they had it made in the shade now. Idiots, all of them. The whole scene was embarrassing, to be honest. I couldn't believe I had stooped this low. But revenge tasted sweeter than a sweet tea. True to my word, I left, and I didn't pay the rent that was due soon. Jennifer, Gail, and Jack blew up my phone for the next couple of days, begging me to come back and pay rent. At least for that month only, and then they'd figure out the rest. Could you imagine the nerve? All I said was, "Tell Jack to sign the divorce papers, 'cause I want nothing to do with you all." Since they couldn't pay the rent, they got kicked out of the house and left stranded and homeless for a while. As for what they're up to now, I have no clue, and honestly, I don't care. But one thing's for sure, I'll always remember the look of horror on Jennifer and Gail's faces when they realized they got played by me. Remember, folks, karma is only a B if you are. I'm Christina, 37, female, and today I'm sharing a testimony, a warning tale about how sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us the most. Not too long ago, I was living a sweet life. Loving wife, doting mom, you know the drill. Enoch, my husband, was the kind of man who built and moved mountains for us. We were on top of the world, living in our own little empire of estates. Life was good for all of us. But as they say, sometimes life throws you curveballs. This was less of a curveball and more of a wrecking ball, though, because none of us were expecting this. When I was 30 and Enoch was 33, the big C word knocked on our door. Cancer. Leukemia, to be precise. It hit Enoch like a freight train, and our whole world shattered. The man who built mountains for us was now facing one he couldn't conquer. See, Enoch was a workaholic, always pushing himself to provide for his family. Although I told him to slow it down, he would never listen. It wasn't in his nature to be stagnant or still. He was always coming up with the next business venture or product to sell. "I gotta keep going, Christina." "Oh, you're just like that man from that musical." "Hamilton?" "Yes, him. Didn't he work himself to death or something?" "He got shot, babe." "Okay, but he was working non-stop, right? I don't want you to end up like that." "Don't worry, darling. Everything will work out for us." "Yeah? That conversation isn't so funny looking back at it now. Little did we know that his relentless pursuit of greatness would weaken his defenses, leaving him vulnerable to something as sinister as leukemia. The news hit us like a ton of bricks, and we were left grappling with the harsh reality. Now, the average life expectancy after a leukemia diagnosis is a mere 5 years. Every tick of the clock felt like a countdown, urging us to cherish every precious moment we had left. Our daughters and I became experts in the art of making the most out of every laugh, every shared meal, every stolen moment of joy, all to shield Enoch from the stress that could further stress him out. We built so much love around him, determined to face this battle together. Now, despite the storm brewing within the family, we did our darndest to keep our spirits high. Enoch, bless his soul, became our guiding light. Even as he endured the harsh treatments, it was he, the one battling the illness, who could brighten our days. His laughter echoed through the house, a reminder that love and joy could thrive even in the darkest of times. Nights were our sanctuary. When the world outside our windows was silent, Enoch and I would crawl into bed, seeking solace in each other's company. We'd talk the night away, reminiscing about the old times, the moments that shaped us into the family we were. It was during these conversations that I learned the true strength of a loving partnership, and I will forever be grateful for those nights. We'd share dreams, whisper hopes, and laugh about the quirks that made our love story uniquely ours. Enoch's resilience was a shining light, guiding us through this really dark period of our lives. As the years rolled on, Enoch's health didn't show any signs of improvement. The resilient man who'd brought laughter into our lives now faced the brutal reality of a body that refused to heal. Yet he was still clinging to that same happy-go-lucky spirit that had defined him all along. His smile, though strained, persisted like a flame in the wind. Inevitably, the time came when Enoch had to be in full-time intensive care. His laughter, once the song that filled our home, was replaced by the cold hum of medical equipment. Enoch lay on what seemed like his deathbed, a stark contrast to the man who'd once been the vibrant heart of our family. The atmosphere was heavy with the grim acknowledgement of the inevitable. His once lively eyes now held a deep sadness, a reflection of the pain that engulfed him. It was crushing to witness, and the laughter that used to echo through our home was now replaced by an eerie silence. Enoch, who had always been the one to offer comfort, found himself in need of all the help he could get. His voice, once a source of joy, had become a rare occurrence. In those precious moments when words escaped his lips, he spoke to me, sharing the sweetest sentiments. In the middle of the suffering and the silence, he'd say, "Christina, you've been my strength, my reason to smile even in the darkest hours. Our love has been my anchor, the only reason I've managed to last 7 more years with you, and I'm grateful for every shared laugh and whispered dream. You and the girls are my greatest blessings. I love you with all my heart." I would bawl my eyes out every day. There is nothing that compares to the pain of knowing that you're losing someone right in front of you. I don't think I'll ever heal from this. Enoch, the man who had faced the world with unwavering strength, now faced his own mortality. Enoch died on a Sunday morning while the kids and I were attending Mass. He had lived to be 40 and had spent his 40th birthday tied up to machines and tubes and slowly losing his life. No way to celebrate a birthday. The man who had been our rock, our source of laughter and strength, was gone. I was left wondering, how would life go on without Enoch's laughter echoing through the halls of our home? I just couldn't fathom the idea of navigating this world without the love of my life by my side. I still can't. Patricia, Enoch's mother arrived at the hospital to find her son dead. The sight was agonizing, a mother's worst nightmare, realized, I'm sure. In the middle of this heart-wrenching scene, I reached out to comfort my grieving mother-in-law, but what happened next shocked everyone in the room. Patricia violently pushed me out of the way. For a second, I thought it was just the grief consuming her, but then she said, "Get away from me! This is all your fault." What? My fault? I knew that this wasn't going anywhere good, so I said, "Girls, go outside for a moment." The girls hesitated, but, sensing our need for privacy, left the room, leaving me alone to face the unexpected storm. "What's going on, Patricia?" "This is all your fault. Enoch worked himself into an early grave, always trying to provide for you and those greedy kids of yours. I've always hated you. You've taken the one thing that I loved in this life. I will never forgive you for this." "Patricia, I know that this is a lot. I'm sorry. Did one of your girls die today?" No." "Then how could you possibly know what I'm going through?" "I think we all need to take a deep breath and just..." "No, I think that you need to leave. You and your vermin have no right being here. Get out, all of you." "I'm not leaving. The girls and I aren't done saying our goodbyes." "No, you have to go now." To say I was shocked would be an understatement. I didn't know why Patricia was attacking me like this. I know that grief makes people react in crazy ways, but I was never expecting anything like this. I felt kind of silly for telling the girls to go out. I'm pretty sure they heard everything. Patricia's yelling escalated, and I'm sure the whole hospital could hear her at that point. Concerned hospital attendants warned that if she didn't calm down, security would be called to escort her out. But Patricia, lost in her own anger, refused to listen to the warnings. Security guards arrived shortly after, firm and composed, attempting to guide Patricia out of the hospital. As she was being escorted out, she was yelling and screaming, cursing out all of us, including her own grandchildren, and humiliating us in front of everyone. After Patricia's dramatic exit from the hospital, I was left standing there, completely dumbfounded. I was filled with confusion and sadness. How did a moment of grief and mourning turn into a raging blame game? It felt like a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. Later in the day, I decided to approach Patricia at her home, hoping that with time she would have calmed down and come to her senses. We needed to discuss the funeral arrangements, support each other through this tragedy, and try to make sense of the chaos that had ensued. So getting through to her sooner rather than later was a good call. I got inside her home with my spare key because she wasn't answering the door, but I knew she was home because her car was in the driveway, and found her in the kitchen. "Patricia, can we talk?" "What the hell are you doing here? I don't want you in my home, you murderer!" "Patricia, I'm hurting too. What is going on with you?" "Get out! Not before we talk." "Talk? What's there to talk about? My son is dead because of you." I might have let this whole blame game slide at the hospital, but not any longer. It was getting out of control, and I couldn't understand why she was fixed on me as the cause of Enoch's death. "Patricia, please. I loved Enoch as much as you did. Blaming me won't bring him back. We need to support each other through this, not tear each other apart. I know you're hurting. Let me get you some tea and we can start to talk about the funeral." "I don't want you at the funeral." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart ached with grief for Enoch, and now I had to endure this crap from his own mother, like going through all of this wasn't enough. "Why do you keep saying that? What do you mean?" "I mean exactly that. You were not allowed to come to the funeral because you are the reason for his death. Now get the hell out of my house." After this big fight with Patricia, first at the hospital and now in her home, I felt like crap. Grief was already hitting hard, and now I had to deal with my mother-in-law accusing me of something I didn't do. I drove home in total silence, my mind all over the place. When I got back home, I put on a fake happy face for my daughters and said everything was cool. But inside, I was actually scared. I just didn't get why Patricia was treating me like garbage all of a sudden, and I had no clue what she'd pull next. The next morning, I woke up to a message in the family group chat. Patricia officially banned me from the funeral, as well as said that the funeral would be happening on the weekend. This was on a Wednesday. I knew I had to sort this crap out with Patricia, but first I had to meet with Enoch's lawyers to discuss the will. I wasn't even in the mood to go because going in that office would make everything seem so real, like he was truly gone. But I had to do what was right to protect me and my family. I had to step up. So I went to the lawyer's office and I was in for a total shock. You see, I figured that Enoch would divvy things up evenly between his mother and me, but when I saw Enoch's will, big surprise. He left everything to me. Not only that, but he had left me this mansion he had been working on before he fell ill. He said that this mansion would be his greatest work, one where all of his grandchildren could roam around freely. I sat there staring at the papers, feeling grateful but guilty. I asked the lawyer about what had happened because I thought that this would be the plan from the beginning, but the lawyer told me that Enoch had updated his will when he first got sick. I don't know what to say. All right, so after settling things at the lawyer's office, I decided to head over to Patricia's place once again to clear the air and to get to the bottom of why she was being so evil. I knocked on her door like a million times, but she wasn't answering. Now, her car was parked right there, so I knew she was home, just like the last time. I was hesitant to walk in again like last time, but I had been knocking for ages and I started getting scared. Anxiety started creeping in. What if something happened to her? I mean, she was an old lady. What if she fell down or something? I used my spare key, opened the door, and called out for Patricia. No response. Went upstairs and looked around. Nada. Downstairs, I spotted a document on the coffee table. Enoch's name caught my eye, so I dove in. What I read ticked me off big time. Patricia was scheming to snatch the mansion away from me. Seriously? The document was detailing some lawsuit where she wanted to sue me for ownership of the house, stating that I had no business owning the house and a bunch of other legal jargon I couldn't understand. I was beyond surprised. I snapped pictures of that snake of a document and stormed out fuming. Got home, sat down, and called up the family lawyers to discuss what I had just seen. I asked if they knew anything about this at all. They were clueless. But one of them mentioned a past convo between Patricia and Enoch about the mansion. Apparently, according to him, Patricia begged Enoch to hand the house over, telling him he had enough houses as is, but he shut her down. Back then, he chalked it up to just typical family banter, you know. But with this context, and after telling them how she forbade me from attending the funeral, it seemed like Patricia had some grand plan in the works. I thanked the lawyers and decided to confront Patricia. I called her since she clearly wasn't at her house. After 3 calls in a row, finally she picked up. Ugh, what do you want? I'm doing good, thanks for asking. You know, that's what normal people say when they pick up the phone. Stop bothering me. You want to send me to an early grave just like you did with my son? You're stressing me out. I have a funeral to plan, which you're not invited to. Need I remind you? So stop asking, because I know you've come to bother me about that. Patricia, we need to talk about this lawsuit I found in your house. What's the deal? She played dumb at first, but I wasn't falling for it. Then, after some prying, she finally spilled it. She felt entitled to the mansion and thought it should have been hers from the get-go. She claimed Enoch promised it to her way back and that it was rightfully hers. I wasn't buying it. Enoch and I talked about the mansion and he wanted it to be ours. That was always the plan, a family thing. So I called Patricia out on her lies and told her about what the lawyer said, and she started acting all flustered. Silence on her end, and then Patricia tried to twist it, saying Enoch changed his mind, or maybe he didn't tell me everything. She was desperate. I shot back and told her that this wasn't going to fly and that Enoch's wish was for us to have the mansion together. Patricia got defensive, accusing me of greed and emphasizing that I didn't deserve the house because I was the reason Enoch died. I hung up. There was no point arguing with someone who was not even in the same reality. And I realized the truth at that moment. The reason why she wanted to paint me out to be the bad guy. I called the lawyers again, gave them the rundown, and they said they'd look into it. They assured me that Enoch's will was solid, that Patricia didn't have a leg to stand on, and that any judge she tried to bring this case to would probably yell at her for wasting their time. Still, the whole thing left a nasty taste. Patricia was not the woman I thought she was. Now, with the funeral around the corner, I had to brace myself for whatever she'd pull next. The weekend rolled around and it was time for Enoch's funeral. I sent the girls ahead with their aunt, telling them I'd join later. The plan? To catch Patricia off guard, make her think I wouldn't show. Just before the funeral kicked off and everyone was settled, I had arrived at the venue, perfectly timing everything, and walked in, throwing everyone, especially Patricia, for a loop. She made a big show of telling everyone I wasn't welcome, but here I was, defying her dramatic proclamation. Patricia was in the middle of her over-the-top eulogy, shedding what seemed like buckets of fake tears. "My sweet baby boy, oh, how I'm going to miss you." Everyone else might have been buying it, but I couldn't care less. I strolled up to the podium, wiped the mic from her hands, and began to speak. I began by sharing my love for Enoch and told the folks gathered there that there's no way I'd miss his funeral, even if it meant losing everything I've ever had. Tears were rolling down my cheeks, but I powered through it, recounting the precious moments I shared with my husband and sharing them with his loved ones. But as my speech neared the end, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. I looked straight at Patricia and laid it out. "Patty, I know you've got your own version of reality, accusing me, blaming me for everything. At first, I thought you were just going crazy from the amount of grief you had. But let's get one thing straight. Enoch loved me, and he wanted us to share everything, including this mansion that you're so obsessed with. His will says it all, and I've got the documents to prove it." Some folks looked shocked, others just uncomfortable. Patricia was fuming, but I didn't back down. I told everyone how Patricia tried to rewrite the story, turn me into the villain, so that suing me for the house would make things easier for her. I mean, if she could blame me for Enoch's death, she could twist anything and everything she wanted in her favor. Maybe she thought I would give her the house to shut her up, or out of shame or guilt as she was trying to gaslight me. Whatever her reasons were, I wasn't having any of it. "That's ridiculous. You think I would do all of this just for a house?" "After seeing your true colors, yes. Yes, I do." I proceeded to share the document I had on the family group so that people in the pews could see that this was her plan all along. I revealed what the lawyer told me about Patricia being angry when Enoch wouldn't give her the mansion. People in the crowd began murmuring in disappointment, with some of Christina's siblings scolding her for what she was doing. This is when she started to crumble, making excuses and saying that she was just upset because she wanted at least something left behind for her in the will. "So that's all you were worried about, the stuff? Not the fact that your own son died a terrible death? No, that's not it at all. Then why are you trying to pin the blame on me, huh?
Why do you insist on suing me for the house? Because, save it, Patty. Everyone can now see who you truly are. I'm just glad that Enoch isn't here to see it. It would completely crush him. I finished my speech, handed the mic back like the boss I am, and walked to where my daughters were sitting and hugged them. I could feel Patricia's angry glare burning holes in my back, but I didn't let it get to me. She looked more embarrassed than anything, and I was glad that she was feeling that way because how she treated me was awful. Enoch deserved better, and I was going to make sure his memory was respected, no matter what Patricia threw my way. Naturally, after laying it all out for Patricia, the funeral proceeded with a thick layer of awkwardness and tension. The pastor took over, sharing some Bible verses and trying to bring back the somber mood. But after my little speech, it was clear things wouldn't be the same, and I got the people talking. After the burial and service, it was time to meet at Patricia's house so people could get some refreshments and continue to mourn. I was about to take my girls with me and go back to our home, since we clearly weren't welcomed after that debacle, but something strange happened. I noticed a bunch of people coming up to me. They asked if we could continue the memorial at my home instead of Patricia's. Apparently my words resonated with them, and some even shared stories about sour encounters with Patricia, saying her antics were shocking but unfortunately not surprising. They apologized for Patricia's behavior, expressing their support for me and the kids. Patricia finally noticed people rallying to my side and got furious. She tried to redirect them to her house, but they weren't having it. My friends and family decided they'd rather be at my place. Patricia stormed off, feeling defeated and embarrassed, I'm sure. And honestly, I couldn't have cared less. This was about Enoch and honoring his memory, not about Patricia's ego trip. At my house, we continued the memorial. People shared stories, laughed, and cried. It was a beautiful mess of emotions, but it felt right. Patricia's attempt to control the narrative had failed, and the truth was out there for everyone to see. I couldn't help but feel grateful for the support from those who believed me. Patricia's bitterness might have cast a dark shadow, but the love and memories we shared with Enoch came out strong in the end. And in a strange way, it felt like Enoch was with us, guiding us through the storm his mother had tried to create. As for Patricia, she's kind of unofficially shunned from the family. She's tried reaching out to some of the family members to get some sympathy, but all they've done is report it to me and leave her unread. So that's my story, folks. Let me know what you think about it. Do you think I should reach out to her? Do you think that she deserves a second chance? Thanks for listening to my story, you all. Hey everyone, Colette here, 26 female, and let me tell you about the craziest roller coaster ride of my life. Buckle up, because it's a wild one. So a couple of years ago, I decided to venture into the vast land of Russia to pursue a 1-year counseling program. Little did I know this journey would lead me to a hunky Russian fellow named Vladlen. Picture this, tall, tattooed, and arms like tree trunks. I mean, how could a girl resist? Within the blink of an eye, things between Vladlen and me went from casual to let's plan a wedding. Yep, love. Works in mysterious ways, folks. We were all set to start a life together, and I couldn't have been happier. Fast forward to the big day, and my family flew all the way to Russia to join the celebration, including my stunning sister Shelley. Now, don't get me wrong, Shelley is drop-dead gorgeous, and it's not like I haven't noticed the heads turning when she enters a room. But what I didn't expect was for my soon-to-be hubby to be shamelessly gawking at her. It started with little glances, the ones you might overlook. But soon it escalated to full-on stares, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The rehearsal dinner was a breaking point. Vladlen was practically drooling over Shelley's presence, and I was done playing nice.
Right there in the midst of our wedding festivities, I called him out. I mean, come on. This was our celebration, and he was acting like he just discovered the eighth wonder of the world in the form of my sister. Okay, now you're pushing it, buddy. What do you mean, my love? Cut the crap, Vlad. You think we all can't see you looking at my sister like that? It's embarrassing. I don't know what you're talking about. You're pathetic, you know that? Why am I even marrying you? So, after that disaster, that was our rehearsal dinner, I stormed out like a tornado, leaving everyone in shock. It was awkward to say the least. The families were left baffled, wondering what the heck just happened. I mean, who could blame them? They didn't fully understand the intense showdown between me and Vladlen. All they saw was an enraged bride-to-be storming off. Later that evening, Shelley found me in my room, drowning in my tears. She's always been the level-headed one in our sisterly duo. Shelley tried to comfort me, telling me everything would be all right, but deep down, I was questioning if I was making the right decision. But you do see how he looks at you, right? Honestly, I haven't even noticed. Are you sure it's not all in your head? I know what I'm seeing, Shelley. Okay, I got you. I don't know why he's staring then, but I can assure you it's not because he wants me. Oh yeah? Then what is it? I don't know, okay? But what I do know is that this man loves you. What makes you so sure? Shelley dropped a bombshell on me. Apparently after I left, Vladlen broke down in tears, pouring his heart out about how much he loved me and didn't want to lose me, and how he didn't want to mess things up between us. Stupidly, at the time, I thought that this was super romantic, completely forgetting how he was drooling all over my sister just hours earlier. I thought, well, if he can cry so openly like that, he must feel something for me, right? So in my clearly emotional state, I decided to go through with the wedding. Call it madness or a moment of weakness, but I chalked up Vlad's fascination with Shelley to some weird quirk. After all, we look alike, but are as different as night and day. I'm the type to scale a mountain and get into a brawl with bouncers at a club, while Shelley looks like she'd break a nail trying to open a can of soda. So with a heavy heart and a ton of mixed emotions, we carried on with the wedding plans. I forgave Vladlen, thinking that maybe this would be a small bump in the road, but little did I know that the storm was far from over. So shortly after that bump in the road, Vlad and I had tied the knot, and for a little while everything was picture perfect. We were glowing from our honeymoon phase, and during our romantic escapade to Spain, where there are plenty of beautiful half-naked women to gawk at, Vlad seemed to have learned his lesson. His eyes were glued to me, and I was cautiously optimistic that we were on the right track. But of course, nothing is forever. The honeymoon phase vanished the moment we landed back in Russia. Reality hit hard, my friends. As I settled into married life, I quickly realized just how difficult it could be. Vlad and I, different in so many ways. Our approaches to life, chores, and even the simplest things clashed like titans in an epic battle. The fights started rolling in, and they were nothing short of explosive. It felt like we were biting each other's heads off by the 3rd month of our marriage, and I was already feeling tired. Vlad and I sat in our living room, the tension thicker than the Russian winter air. The argument had started innocently enough. Dishes left in the sink, socks scattered like breadcrumbs on our living room floor. But as these mundane issues often do, they morphed into a full-blown disagreement about our entire approach to domestic life. Vlad, seriously, how many times have I asked you to pick up after yourself? The house is a mess. I don't see the problem. It's just a couple of things here and there. A couple of things? Turns into a pigsty. I can't focus in this chaos. Focus on what? It's just a house. We're not in a museum. You need to relax. It's called having some pride in your living space. I didn't marry a frat boy. I married an adult. Adulting doesn't mean obsessing over every little thing. You need to chill. Chill? Vlad, do you realize how much I do around here? It's like I'm running a one-woman show, and you're just an audience member who occasionally throws socks on the stage. I work hard outside the house. Maybe if you got a job, you wouldn't stress so much about this. You did not just go there. You know I'm finishing my counseling program. It's not like I'm sitting around eating bonbons. It doesn't feel like you're contributing much. I contribute by keeping this place from becoming a disaster zone. To say I was confused would be an understatement. I mean, how did we go from a passionate romance in Spain to this war zone in our home? It was crazy and exhausting. Don't get me wrong, some days were better than others. He'd show me why I married him in the first place, but I was getting sick and tired of the back and forth. I thought that this was just going to be my life from now on, but things only got worse from there. And it was all because of a pair of underwear. Let me explain. Vlad's brother, Nikolai, was staying over for a week due to work. He lived in St. Petersburg and rarely came to Moscow. So having him over was a treat. I always liked Nikolai. He was very kind and smart, and we had a lot of shared interests. He was a true brother-in-law, someone who actually cared about me. So one day, while sorting a load I wanted to wash, I found myself with Nikolai's laundry in hand. He had left his clothes in the washing machine, and I was about to transfer his stuff to the dryer so I could put my load in. As I was transferring his things, Vlad happened to be walking by, and he saw me holding up Nikolai's underwear. Let me tell you, that set him off. He started saying all sorts of crazy insults, calling me an honorless woman without letting me explain the mix-up. My attempts to clarify only made things worse. And you have the nerve to talk to me about gawking over your sister when you're here fondling my brother's underwear? Listen to what you're saying right now. You think I want Nick? You're crazy. As you can see, I'm simply doing laundry. I don't want to hear it, Colette. You're a liar and a hypocrite. God, I feel so stupid. Vlad, please calm down. Let's talk about this like adults. I'm trying to explain. I don't want to hear you right now, Colette. I'm not in the mood. I just found out that my wife wants to get with my brother. How sick is that? The laundry room became a war zone, and Vlad's anger seemed to grow with every word I spoke. Tears welled up as I tried to reason with him, but he stormed out, leaving me stunned. Nikolai came just as Vlad left and found me in tears. It was supposed to be a simple week of family fun, but instead it turned into a nightmare driven by stupid accusations and insecurity. Colette, what's going on? I heard yelling. Is everything all right? It's actually very stupid and embarrassing to admit, but your brother thinks I want you. What? Really? Why would he think that? Because I was moving your laundry into the dryer and he saw me holding your underwear for 2 seconds. Damn, I always knew he was crazy. You're telling me, did he get dropped on his head as a baby or something? No, but I did knock on it a couple of times when we were growing up, so maybe that did some damage. I laughed. He always knew how to make me smile. I'm sorry, my brother is an idiot. I'll talk to him, don't you worry, and I'm sorry for landing you in such crap. No, you have nothing to apologize for. He's the one who needs to say sorry. He called me an honorless woman. What? That is not okay. I think you need to hit his head a couple more times. Nick and I talked a bit more before he headed out to work, and I thought that Vlad just needed to blow off some steam, and then he'd come back home, apologize as usual, and we'd go back to some semblance of happiness in this godforsaken marriage. But that didn't happen. When Vlad got back from God knows where, he was giving me the silent treatment, something he had never done before, and something that he said he'd never do. Vlad's silent treatment was so obvious, but I thought it would pass. Well, it didn't. Even after Nikolai went back to his city, Vlad kept being distant and cold. Weeks passed and Vlad's attitude didn't change. I couldn't handle it anymore. One day I just broke down in tears. I needed to know what was up with Vlad and why he was so angry with me. Vlad, please talk to me. I can't live like this. But all I would get in return is radio silence. I begged and cried and begged again, and he finally said something. I don't love you anymore. Those words hurt like hell. It wasn't just a lack of love. He straight up hated me. The guy I thought was my partner, my love, was treating me like garbage. In the past, we'd argue, but things would usually get better. This time, it was different. Vlad wasn't interested in making up. He seemed to enjoy piling on the insults. It sucked, realizing he just didn't care about me anymore. I felt stuck. I wanted our marriage to work, but Vlad was making it impossible. Dealing with his crap became a daily struggle, and I couldn't figure out why he was doing this. A whole year passed, and our relationship just got worse. We moved around the house like we were strangers, avoiding each other. I questioned myself every day, wondering why I was still putting up with this. Shame and embarrassment stopped me from asking for help or even leaving because I didn't want to have a failed marriage. I thought that we could get back to how things were in the beginning. That's why I was holding on to hope. I wasn't ready to give up. I hoped things might change, that the guy I fell in love with would come back. But with each passing day, that hope faded. So here I was, stuck in a nightmare of a marriage with Vlad. He had turned from this loving guy into someone I didn't even recognize. I was tired, fed up, and I just couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. Then, one day, out of the blue, my sister, Shelley, called me. Hey, sis. Hi, how are ya? I'm doing well. So listen, I have some news to share with you. I'm going to come to Russia. What? That's amazing. I've missed you and the fam so much. Seeing you would be a breath of fresh air. Trust me. It turns out my sister was coming to Russia to study the same program I did when I first got here. Man, I was over the moon. Finally, a break from the toxic home I was stuck in. When Shelley arrived, the dynamics at home changed. Vlad, who barely spared me a kind word, suddenly transformed into Prince Frickin' Charming. He was all over Shelley, tending to her every whim, promising to show her around the city like she was royalty. I couldn't believe it. Vlad hadn't even offered half the things he was offering to Shelley during the entirety of our marriage. But she'd been there for a day, and he was already speaking like he was written by Shakespeare himself. This angered me like you wouldn't believe. I could see through the act. It was crystal clear. He was truly in love with Shelley, not me, and he resented me for it. So I decided that I was done with him, completely this time. I stopped trying. I stopped trying to please Vlad and win his affection. I had nothing left for him, not an ounce of love. He could get hit by a freight train and I wouldn't bat an eye, and you wouldn't believe how much this surprised him. I swear toxic people don't even have two brain cells to rub together. He was so used to me begging for his attention, he practically expected it, and now here I was, just done with his BS. One day the tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Vlad was trying everything to get a reaction out of me, but I wouldn't budge. I had reached the point where I just didn't care anymore. This drove him nuts. He couldn't understand why I wasn't reacting to his usual provocations and insults. It was like a switch flipped, and now he was the one on edge. It was liberating in a twisted way. Watching Vlad squirm because he couldn't control me anymore was the revenge I didn't know I needed. I realized I wasn't going to let him dictate my happiness or self-worth anymore. Colette, why haven't you made dinner yet? Oh, I made dinner, just for myself, though. What? Why? Because I asked you what you wanted to eat and you ignored me. I thought you'd ask me again. Why didn't you check in again with me? I'm not your mother, Vlad. Why do I have to repeat myself? You're a grown man. If you want to eat something, go and cook yourself something to eat. You see, this is the crap I'm talking about. You make me so mad. That's nice. Are you done? Do you know something, Colette? You're worthless. Yeah, I said it. I really got dealt a bad hand when I met you. God, I wish I had married your sister instead. Maybe I wouldn't be so miserable. I'm not going to lie. It stung to hear those words, but I quickly recovered and said, You know what? I can say the exact same thing about your brother. Vlad's rage was like a storm in the house when I dropped the bomb on him. I'd never seen someone that angry before. I told him straight up that I was done, that I wasn't going to play his games anymore. The more he yelled, the more stuff he broke, and the less I cared. I had reached a point of no return. While he was going berserk, I calmly packed a duffel bag. I didn't bother to answer when he asked where I was going. My actions spoke louder than any words I could have thrown at him. It was time to escape this toxic mess. I slammed the door behind me, leaving Vlad to stew in his own madness, and then I booked a flight to St. Petersburg. A couple of months went by, and that's when I received a call from Vlad. I'm guessing he was tired of giving me the cold shoulder as he usually does. He probably expected me to come back begging, but not this time. Anyway, he claimed to miss me, stating that he wanted to change and be a better man for me. Yeah, like I haven't heard that before. I roll. He invited me to a family reunion he was hosting, telling me how he wanted to make things right again. Part of me was skeptical, but I agreed to attend. When the day arrived, I brought Nikolai with me. Obviously, I was staying with him when I went to St. Petersburg. After spending time with him in his city, he had become a comforting presence. Walking in with my brother-in-law instead of my husband raised a few eyebrows, but of course people brushed it off. We were family after all. Little did they know the storm brewing beneath the surface. Vlad's reaction was immediate fury when he saw us together. The tension was thicker than peanut butter, and I knew he wanted to scream his head off like the toddler he was, but he had to keep his cool. I greeted Shelley as I hadn't seen her in a while. As we made small talk before being seated at the dinner table, I knew this was the moment to lay everything out on the table. Before we said grace and began the meal, I stood up. All eyes turned to me as I announced that I had something important to say. The room fell silent, and I took a deep breath, ready to reveal the truth. Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. I have a small announcement I would like to make. I would like everyone here to know the kind of person my husband is. As I began to speak, I laid out the crap I went through with Vlad in the past year of marriage, stories of Vlad's erratic behavior, his cruel words, and the emotional toll it had taken on me. Gasps and murmurs spread across the table, and I could see shock registering on the faces of our family members. Vlad, in a desperate attempt to divert attention, started awkwardly laughing, dismissing my words, but I wasn't about to be stopped. As the room was buzzing with disbelief, I dropped a bombshell that made Vlad jump up from his seat. The revelation hung in the air, casting a dark shadow over the family reunion. It was a truth I couldn't keep hidden any longer, and I was glad I was there to see it all on his face. The shock, the anger, but most of all, the humiliation. Very recently, Vlad actually told me that I was worthless and that he wished he had married my sister instead. What? Gross! That's not true. That's not true at all. Don't listen to her. She's crazy. Colette, shut the hell up. No, Vlad. I will not shut up. The people need to know the truth. Anyway, back to what I was saying. As you can imagine, those words were the final nail in the coffin. So I hit him back by saying that I would say the same thing about his brother. But you see, the difference between Vlad and I is that I back up my words every single time. I slowly stood up from the table and I removed my jacket to reveal a small but very visible baby bump. You might think I'm worthless, Vlad, but your brother certainly doesn't think so. Everyone was shocked. There was silence for a moment, and it looked like Vlad was too stunned to speak for the first time in his life. Now, before any of you say anything, I just want to make it clear. Colette and I have been getting to know each other more, and well, there's no easy way to say this, but I love her, and I want to treat her better than this idiot ever could. Bro, really? How could you do this to me? You're my brother. And you're an adamant child in the body of a man. This woman loved you with everything she had, and you consistently showed her that you were just a child. Don't be mad at me because she wanted a real man. That set him off for real. Vlad lunged at his brother, and Nick quickly dodged his attack. They started fighting, and everyone in the family started going crazy. I couldn't speak fluent Russian, but I could understand that everyone was upset. I mean, clearly. I sat down with my sister and she just stared at me in disbelief. So, let me get this straight. You had a baby with your brother-in-law to get back at your husband? Do you know how crazy that is? Honestly, he had it coming. Now he has to live with the fact that his brother is in love with me. You are one cold gal, Carl, but honestly, I'm impressed. So, you're not mad? I could never be mad at you, especially with what you explained about how he treated you this past year. Why didn't you tell me about it? You know, I would have booked the first flight here to knock some sense into him. I was embarrassed, sis. I thought that I could fug it out and be strong, but I realized I didn't need to do that. I had someone about 4 hours away who didn't want to treat me like crap. One thing I've learned in this life is that you have to go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. I know that's right. And clearly Nick was doing a lot of celebration. It was honestly quite crazy, laughing and giggling alongside my sister while Nick and Vlad were being separated by their very angry family members. Nick was saying he loved me and that he'd marry me the second my divorce from Vlad was official, and Vlad was saying that he wasn't going to be humiliated like that. Some of the family members were on Vlad's side, calling Nick an a-hole for getting me pregnant, and other family members were on Nick's side, saying that they raised Vlad better, and that if any of the things I was saying were true, then Vlad didn't have the right to be mad, since it was clear that he hated me. Of course, I got some glares from some relatives, but I didn't give a damn. I was going to have a good life with Nick, and Vlad will have to live the rest of his life knowing that I got knocked up by his brother.